everything just happened within about 3 seconds. I started feeling the airplane starting to shake like any normal turbulence. And then people just hit their head straight through the compartments, breaking the plastic, and people slamming straight down on the armrests, hitting their bags, hitting the head on something. As soon as when the plane tipped up and down, it felt like something worse was going to happen. We were going to crash.
Flight SQ321, which was en route from London to Singapore, was hit by severe turbulence and forced to an emergency landing in Bangkok. 1 person died and 70 more were injured. Will such a severe turbulence happen again? That's what I want to find out.
It's nature, and that turbulence nobody can predict, nobody can detect. And that is the one that we all fear.
And if I'm ever caught in one, what should I do? Since the incident happened, it's been hard to get victims to tell us their stories. But I've managed to find someone. She wasn't a victim, but she had 6 family members and a friend on board the fateful SQ321 flight. My producer Charmaine is heading to Penang to meet her.
我是昨天才从曼谷飞回来，然后我弟弟就早上的飞机，所以我们的家其实在这里附近，只是我弟弟在家休养嘛，所以就不方便做访问在家。
你这几个星期来你还 OK 吗？
因为我是大姐嘛，知道 news 说有1个人死亡，然后有很多伤者嘛，我那个时候很 panic， 因为7个人都在那个飞机上面，所以到我们联系到他们，一直到他们的消息是。他们是在 ICU， 我就飞过去泰国，在那边我看到他们，我弟弟他的头还是不大能转，他整个手脚是麻的，而且是还痛的，他的 movement 还是不是这么好，他是可以动可以走。他说昨天再坐回那个飞机哈，他讲那个感觉又再来，他是很怕的，就是不敢动了，就是坐着。不敢去厕所，什么都不敢，就是绑着安全带了。
所以你的弟弟有没有跟你很像描述说当时在飞机的情况是发生什么事的吗？我
弟弟跟他老婆是坐着的，只是他们没有绑安全带，因为刚刚吃完东西就走动，然后就坐着。但是他说他一感觉到有那个震动，他就快找他的那个 seat belt，但是还来不及。就是挤上那个 seat belt， 他已经就是飞出去了的，应该是几秒里面而已，飞上去掉下来了，跌在那个 walkway 的啊。
他的脸是朝地板的，
而且他是完全不能动。他说我感觉不到我的手脚，这一次死了，我是 gone，I'm gone。我弟弟的father-in-law，他当时在厕所嘛，他 feel 到震动，他就开始抓东西，但是还来不及抓东西，他就整个人飞上去掉下来，他的头是压着那个门的。他的姑姑也是在厕所里面嘛，那个 impact 一跳的时候，他就直接飞上来，他是掉在地上。那我弟弟的老婆，她是掉在各2张椅子，她脚是打到另外1个人的头的，她已经不能动了。那我弟弟的老婆怀孕的，她一开始她很 reluctant to 做那些 scan， 因为她怕影响到孩子，然后她也不要吃药，所以她忍痛，她怕吃药会影响到她 baby 嘛，那些就是那个时候一开头的时候就很 complicated， 然后就 emotional 很，因为她以为她没有事情的，她自己以为她撞到而已，但是就越来越痛，就是到最后医生就讲不能，你一定要做 scan。然后就看到他的骨，他是刚刚好中到他 T5，所以是很危险的，而且不立刻马上去做那个手术的话呢，他可能会瘫痪的。这个是医生说的，所以没有办法。那个时候他们就是 take the risk 咯，因为医生也有跟他说也会可能会影响到胎儿嘛。他的那个颈椎开了刀，他其实现在睡他是不能沉睡的，而且每隔1-2个小时他可能就醒，因为他很痛，而且他是 feel 到他后面的那个螺丝嘛，他是放那个螺丝嘛，是实力顶着他的，所以他是很不舒服的。
他的胎儿
说法现在讲 scan 什么东西都 OK 啦现在是3个月了，
所以长期来看。 他们的伤势有什么影响？
不敢说啦。然后你的那个 treatment 要做多久，其实也不懂。我弟弟有做 physio 嘛 treatment 一些，所以是有好一点，但是那个疼痛还是有，他是很压力，而且现在又要顾公司的东西啦，又不能做工嘛。
所以新加坡航空公司有说他们即将赔偿那些受伤者，那你跟你的家人觉得如何？
其实我们也是在就是媒体啊 news 那边看到。其实他也是只是讲 compensation on serious injury 跟就是没有这么 serious 的 injury 嘛，但是那个蛮 general 嘛，我们还没有收到任何的一些准确的一些通知，因为他说我们可以跟他们面谈。
全部的家人亲戚住院的医药费呢？
哦，那个一开始没有，一开始都是 SIA 他们在帮我们处理的这些东西，他们安排所有的东西。
Preliminary investigations revealed that SQ321 dropped 54 meters in under 5 seconds.
How high is 54 meters? Well, it's about 20 stories high. Imagine free falling from this height in under 5 seconds.
The cause of this? Air turbulence. There are different types of air turbulence. Among them, convective turbulence, which is the most common. It refers to vertical motions of rising and descending currents of air due to uneven heating of the Earth's surface. There's turbulence caused by weather, mechanical turbulence caused by obstruction to wind flow, for example from buildings or mountains, and clear air turbulence. This is essentially turbulence occurring in cloudless regions. This is Captain Srini. Having flown for close to 44 years before his retirement, he's encountered his fair share of turbulence. We know what happened in the SQ plane when the turbulence hit.
Hey, hi Shrey.
Pleasure.
Welcome to the cockpit.
All right.
But I want to know what went on in the cockpit.
In basic terms, turbulence is the motion of air, disturbance of air due to various forces that has caused movement of air to be disrupted. From the report which was released, the official report stated that the aircraft went through rapid changes in G forces, up and down forces, which means the aircraft was tossed around a bit. So one analogy is talking about G forces when you're sitting on a roller coaster, one of the things and you feel like stomach comes in your mouth sort of thing. And that's fun. But that's when you're strapped up.
Simply put, we experience G-force each time there is a change in direction or speed or height.
Imagine that in an aircraft where you're not strapped up and G-force hit you. You're just thrown up and down.
So, Captain, how do pilots in real-life situations deal with turbulence?
I'm going to promote you to this seat. It normally takes 12 years. Come up here and really be hands-on right from this captain's seat.
Okay, thank God there are no passengers. So shall we attempt severe turbulence?
All right, this is what we call severe turbulence, because if you see the fluctuation of the altitude is pitching up and down, speed increasing. So really now, everybody should have been strapped in now.
All right, so Captain, do you ever disengage autopilot?
If the aircraft is managing it and the speed's not fluctuating, it's doing a good job, so we leave it.
So is there ever a situation where you have to disengage?
Yes, if the autopilot cannot cope with it, then you may have to disconnect it, fly it manually. Okay, now you disconnect it. Disconnect switches here. Disconnect.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's manually flying it. You fly to put the box here right in the middle of the two lines.
Ooh, I see, okay.
All right, give it a go.
See, it's getting worse. Oh, okay. I'm bringing everyone on a terrible roller coaster
This is what they call pilot-induced turbulence, which is worse than severe turbulence. So I suggest now we put back the autopilot.
So, Captain, if we are facing turbulent weather,
Could you just fly over it? Okay, in this scenario, we've actually gone up to 40,000 feet. And you can see we've climbed over most weather. But now what's happened is that this is what you call the maximum speed, where the red bar is. And the minimum, called VLS, is where the yellow bar is. So what we have done is we have created a very, very narrow band to have the safe limits to fly with.
So the higher you go, the faster you go too?
Not necessarily. It's all dependent on the weight. For this aircraft, we are very near the maximum limit. Beyond that, you can have structural damage. As you can see now, we're hitting moderate turbulence, and now it's fluctuating, and the speed is fluctuating as well. Now, you are in a very, very narrow corner where you could hit the maximum or the minimum, which you don't want. So that's why climbing up high above clouds, it's not recommended unless you have a safety margin.
Because it lowers your bend.
Yes.
So we still have to find a way to maneuver the turbulence.
So that's why
and the
it's better
storms.
to go, if you're hit in turbulence, it's better to go down to a lower level. For example, now if I descend now to maybe 35,000 feet, as we descend, we find the margin actually gets wider, so your safe operation has a benefit of a wider range where you don't get caught.
Right, so if you hit turbulence at a lower altitude, it's easier to manage because you have a wider band.
Exactly.
In the case of SQ321, the pilot switched off autopilot and manually controlled the plane for 21 seconds to stabilize the aircraft.
So some studies have shown that we're going to be expecting more turbulence in the future and more severe kinds of turbulence because of climate change.
At this point, I think there's no marked increase in terms of casualties due to turbulence because of environmental change, but definitely there is a factor.
Captain Srini can't say for certain that climate change will result in more turbulence. But Singapore's leading climate scientist, whom I'm about to meet, might have some bad news.
See this kettle here? Well, it's not to boil a cup of tea. It's to show you the impact that climate change has on the atmosphere.
Climate change causes turbulence because it has an impact on the atmosphere. It's like a kettle. As you get more heat, it causes more moisture and the air to heat up. And as we know from a hot air balloon, hot air rises. So more heat, more hot air rising, bigger thunderstorms, and more turbulence.
Professor Dale Barker has been studying weather patterns and climate change for the past 3 decades.
So what we have here, Shrey, is a comparison of turbulence 44 years ago, 1979, versus now. On the left is a map of the severe turbulence in 1979, and on the right, 2020. So what it means is the probability of turbulence has increased.
So the darker the red, the higher the probability for severe turbulence.
That's right. So this is severe turbulence. So you can see the probability is quite low. It's 2-3%. But with all the flights we have, adds up to a lot of hours. What you can see here is a nice little globe that spins. And what it's showing is what we call the sea surface temperature anomaly. Now, anomaly is the difference between this day, which is a couple of days ago, 8th of June, and an average over a long period of time. And what the baseline here is 1991 to 2020. So that's a good 30 years. So how does sea surface temperature around the globe differ from the average over that long period of time? And red means hotter. There's not much blue.
Oh no. So this means just a few days ago, it's been hotter than what oceans have been in the past 30 years.
Absolutely. It's just like the kettle. Warmer heating at the surface leads to more clouds, more energy, and ultimately more turbulence.
SQ321 was flying across the Bay of Bengal. That's the northeastern part of the Indian Ocean, bordered by Sri Lanka, India, Bangladesh, Myanmar, and Malaysia.
According to some reports, is notoriously turbulent during the monsoon season. I want to find out if certain routes are more prone to turbulence than others.
This is Gary Ho, a former air traffic controller who scans the skies, alerting pilots of dangers in the horizon.
Are there regions generally that are more prone to turbulence than others?
This region, in general, we are near the equator, so there's that intermonsoonal winds that's changing. There's also convective currents from the ocean, because oceans, as they heat and cool, it heats the air above it, right?
Okay.
So think of it like when you're boiling a pot of soup and you put a piece of tissue, you will see the turbulence. Because your tissue will be fluttering as you're boiling water, and that's what happens over the oceans.
Okay.
So right on the equator is where all the air comes down from the poles. And so at the equator, generally you find there's a little bit more turbulence.
They're meeting.
Yes, they're meeting and they're exchanging. Okay, just like if you were to look at the water, where the river meets the ocean, that's where you're going to get all that messy waves, right? So there are certain routes that may be more prone, but it's never dangerous.
Let's talk a bit specifically about SQ321. They were flying above the Bay of Bengal. Is there anything about this region that makes it more prone to turbulence?
Okay, this area during certain times of the year is more turbulent because the monsoons are changing.
What about the monsoon causes this turbulence?
If you look at weather maps, there's a certain way winds flow. Generally, it will come over here, it will come down. Your northeast monsoon is here, and then your southwest monsoon is here. When the wind is changing, that's when you feel more turbulence. Just picture the sea. When the current is very strong, you see boats sailing very smoothly, right? But the problem you face is when the tide is changing, when it's going from high tide to low tide, that's when the waves are pulling out and you find that, you find that the boat is not as smooth. Same thing with the air.
So, at the Bay of Bengal, along that route, there must have been other flights.
Yes. In fact, for that particular day, there was a plane in front and there was a plane behind. Nobody encountered turbulence except for SQ321. And SQ321, if you look at it, it was so sudden. So this is clear air turbulence. Clear turbulence can happen anywhere, anytime. It's nature. And that turbulence, nobody can predict, nobody can detect. And that is the one that we all fear.
Monsoon winds make clear air turbulence worse, which is what we saw in the SQ321 incident. And it just so happened that it was the southwest monsoon season in May, when SQ321 was flying over the Bay of Bengal. Currently, there's no technology to detect clear air turbulence, but local researchers are saying this could help.
The recent SQ321 incident has shown us just how dangerous turbulence can get. But while most turbulence is easy to spot, clear air turbulence, believed to be what hit SQ321, cannot be detected by any radar systems.
But Mr. Chung, a former licensed aircraft engineer, suggested that 3D laser scanning technology, which is commonly used in self-driving cars, might be the solution.
Current weather radar systems are actually only capable of picking up water vapors in the clouds. But unfortunately, if it's clear turbulence, there is no water vapor present, so the weather radar indicator will be unable to pick up on that. So LiDAR technology, which you can commonly find in automated cars, can detect clear air turbulence.
I was wondering about that because it sounded very familiar, and I did an episode on self-driving cars and we talked about LiDAR, but I would never have thought that could be used for clear air turbulence. How would that work?
So let me show you how LiDAR technology works.
Oh! That is both freaky and adorable at the same time.
So that's the LiDAR system you're seeing on the top of the robot dog's body. Right now, it's actually shooting out a laser pulse from the LiDAR itself and then also measuring the time it takes for that pulse to bounce off the surroundings back to the detector itself. And from that, this is able to pick up its spatial surroundings and will display the information on a screen.
This is a still environment, it's concrete, it's buildings. how does this work up in the air?
So in the air, actually, you will fire a more focused beam in front of the aircraft to pick up on the movement of air molecules in front of the aircraft and send back the data to the pilot, and will display the information all on a screen, as you can see behind you. This chart, as you can see, there are many colors on the screen. The colors actually represents the distance of the object's relation to the LiDAR detector. The further the object, the lighter the color gets. So anything near the robot dog or the detector will be red. As it goes further, the color changes to reflect that. So ideally, this is what the pilot should be able to see on his screen in the cockpit, a group of air turbulence in a shade of a different color on the screen, and then he'll be able to know that there is actually clear air turbulence in front of the aircraft and react accordingly to that.
So what's keeping this from becoming a reality?
For LiDAR to be actually deployed effectively in high altitudes, you need more power, and in the case for using more power, the unit has to be bigger. It's very costly to have a big unit and be able to deploy across a fleet of aircrafts in an airline. And secondly, with the big unit, you have issues actually trying to implement this system into an aircraft without adding too much weight to the aircraft while it's flying. But the issue is always that as higher it goes, the shorter the detection range will go. And of course, air molecules, unfortunately, are not so predictable in this case. They have a tendency to move around all that. And so actually, in order for the LiDAR detector to actually pick up on all this movement of air molecules, they have to utilize a lot of processing powers.
How long do you think it will take for us to get to the level of technology for this to become a reality?
If I were to be optimistic, I hope for it to be actually available in 3 years' time, if not possibly a decade or so. Our current technology is still unable to reach to what's required operating specification for it to be feasible in the air. And also regulators generally take time to actually implement new technology into the aircraft.
I mean, even with all the aircrafts that are already present, to upgrade them, to add new tech, all of that would take time and money.
Yes.
With turbulence becoming more common and new technology still years away, what can you do to stay safe? Well, we all know that the safest way to stay protected is to always buckle up. But during a long flight, what happens if you need to stretch your legs or use the restroom and unexpected turbulence hits? Well, experts recommend staying low and holding on to an armrest or anything nearby. But if you happen to be in the lavatory and the seatbelt sign is switched on, hold on to the handles provided for emergency. Now, these handles are also available in the galley, where service crew prepare meals. But be careful. Service carts, like this one, can become dangerous during severe turbulence. Now, are there safer seats in the plane? Well, seats located in the middle of the plane may be slightly less turbulent because they are closer to the plane's center of gravity. But ultimately, seat selection shouldn't have that much of an impact. What's more important is to always keep our seatbelts fastened, even when the seatbelt sign is switched off.